Good evening, everybody. My name is Dustin Hurst. I am the Vice President of the Idaho Freedom Foundation and Idaho Freedom Action here in Boise. IFF is a public policy think tank that's been an influential leader in developing policy solutions that preserve the Idaho way of life. We advocate for limited government, personal responsibility, self-reliance, and just the principles of limited government. I think I said that, but there we go. With me tonight, I'm really excited about our guest. He's our subject matter expert, good friend of mine. He's somebody who has been in the arena, who has the experience, and he's willing to share his knowledge with us tonight. It's Bryan Zollinger. He's a former two-term state rep from Idaho Falls. Thank you for joining us, Bryan. Do you want to do any introduction of yourself?
No, I'm glad to be here. Appreciate you having me. It's good to see this many participants, and this is where we get stuff done, is people being involved. And so I think Dustin's got a great session planned tonight, and I'm looking forward to it myself. Get a little refresher course, and happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Bryan, for being here. Now, before we deep dive into Legislature 101, I want to put things in context and kind of frame the discussion. So a lot of us are let down after the results of national elections. We see progressivism on the march. I'm as sad as a lot of people, but I know that a lot of America still believes in the principles that we hold dear: the limited government, the personal responsibility, being good with your money, not raising taxes on people. And there's several opportunities ahead of us during the 2021 legislative session that, if we can capture them, will fundamentally change Idaho for the better for decades to come. I'm talking education reform, property tax reform, tax relief, limiting executive power, and giving the legislature more power to call itself back into session, wrangling public health districts, lots of stuff. There's so much stuff that can happen this year. And I'll tell you, a lot of people I've been talking, even in the last 24 hours, a lot of people have reached out and said, Dustin, I can't. 2020 was terrible. There were stolen elections. There was this, there was that. Yeah, I know. I understand. I get it. But there's too much at stake. There's way too much at stake for us to give up and to just be apathetic and just go about our lives. And I'll tell you, I don't love doing government stuff all day, every day. I wish I didn't have to, but somebody does, or else the left will win, and their ideas, their harmful, toxic ideas will win. And their march toward socialism will continue. So unfortunately, it's on you, it's on me, it's on Bryan to do this work. So please keep your spirits high, take a break when you need to, but know that this is important work, and Idaho can shine to the rest of the nation. We can export our ideas. In fact, we just released a really cool report about social justice in higher education, about how it's infecting that whole system. And we've had other people reach out and say, hey, how can we duplicate this research? How can we do what you're doing? Our ideas are being exported. People are watching. I mean, we all watched South Dakota as they went through the lockdowns, and actually didn't go through the lockdowns. And they're fine. People are now watching Idaho too. So please, that's the context. The larger discussion here is we can kind of set the course for the nation, or be the example for the nation, if we work hard. So with that, I'm going to start with some really basic information. And if it's too basic, I'm sorry. But like I said, this is Legislature 101. We are starting at the very bottom. So the idea is to just tell you about the process, tell you the basics, stuff like that. And then we'll go to how to win, how to engage with your lawmakers, stuff like that. So on the screen right now, what you see is a map of the Idaho Capitol, which is weirdly hard to find on the internet, or maybe I'm just bad at the Googles. I don't know, but regardless, we have it. So I'm going to walk you through the Capitol building itself and kind of give you a preview of that. I'll walk you through the process of how a bill becomes law. It's super duper simplified. There are more steps than I want to show you tonight, but this is the basics, right? And then we'll talk with Bryan, like I said, about how to engage with your lawmakers and resources that you can use to make sure that you have a good relationship with your lawmakers, you're educated, and you're ready to go. So again, thank you for tuning in, and let's go. So right here on the screen, like I said, we've got the central garden level of the Capitol. It's kind of the bottom floor, kind of, sort of. You see there's legislator offices. I think those doors are now locked. They used to be just freely accessed, but now you have to call the lawmakers to get in. Press corps, the gift shop. There's not a lot here. It's just kind of like a hustle and bustle area, and you'll see lobbyists and guests, milling about. Nothing big there. But that's one part of the Capitol. Now we get into where you're going to want, if you come down to the Capitol, you're going to spend a lot of your time either in the Senate West Wing or the House East Wing. And if you look at this map, and again, we are going to provide this map for you in just a second. I'll give you the link to this map and to a bunch of other resources. But if you look at this map, it shows you where every committee meeting is held for the Senate. So you've got the State Affairs, Resources, Education in West Wing 55. In West Wing 54, you've got Commerce, Judiciary and Rules, Health and Welfare. West Wing 53, you get the idea. So there's that. There is a dining room there if you need to grab food. And I believe that, Bryan, that's open to the public, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And if there's a big meeting, or a really big committee meeting, or maybe there's joint committee meetings, West Wing 02 in the Lincoln Auditorium, that's where that's held. And it's a fairly big room. It's actually a really beautiful room if you go in there. So this is where Bryan did a lot of his work. It's actually where I like to sit and play because the House is way more fun than the Senate. The personalities in the House are way more fun. Just a personal thing. But so here's the map for the House East Wing, EW 42. There's a lot that goes on there. It's a bigger committee room, and that's because there's a lot of important issues that go on there. Judiciary and Rules, Revenue and Taxation, big ones. In EW 40, there's a good one there. State Affairs does a lot of work, a ton of work on some of the most divisive and important issues. Let's see, Health and Welfare is in EW 20. Bryan, I believe that was one of your committees, so you've been in that room a lot. So that's House East Wing, and those are the two wings on the Capitol that are underground. There are entrances on 6th Street and 8th Street. Yeah, 6th Street and 8th Street. There you go. Now we move up to the first floor. There's not much here other than just offices, state treasurer, LSO, just support staff, stuff like that. Then you go to the second floor. This is where the Secretary of State has an office. The treasurer has space. The lieutenant governor has a very small office. The attorney general, Lawrence Wasden, has his office there. And the governor's office and the staff, they're also on the second floor. So you might, if you want to weigh in with the governor, or if he holds a press conference, a ceremonial bill signing, that's where you'll want to go. Okay. The third floor, Bryan's been here a lot too. So the House chamber is on one side, and legislative leadership offices. And then on the other side, it's the Senate. And you'll know the actual, in this graphic, the House is shown as blue. The carpet in the House is blue. In the Senate, the carpet is red. It's very nice and matching and helps me remember where I am at in the Capitol. The other really important room that's no fun to sit in because they spend all of your money, that's on the third floor, is the JFAC room. So you see that JFAC's right there, and you can go in and you can see what they're doing, and just lots of stuff going on. That's where they set the budget. They meet there from 8 o'clock to 10:30 every morning, and that's JFAC right there. So then on the fourth floor, this is where, if you want to watch the floor hearings, this is where you want to go. Again, you see the House is on one side, the Senate is on the other side. And that's kind of that. There are rules for the sitting in the galleries. You can't have like offensive T-shirts. You can't have signs. You can't have flags, stuff like that. I believe they make you check your bags or leave your bags at the door. So make sure, and there are, on our resources page, we did share capital usage guidelines. So be aware that there are rules, and they will enforce those rules, especially when they know that there's going to be heated debate. Weirdly enough, I'm going to answer one question. Walter asks, is there concealed carry in the Capitol? The answer is yes. There's open carry in the Capitol too. Happens all the time. It's It's a thing, and this is Idaho, and we're cool with it. And I know, by the way, and you hear this every once in a while, lawmakers are carrying too. Lots of them. Several of them have shown me their guns. It's pretty cool. And that's the Idaho way. So yes. So there you go. I do want to talk now very quickly, and if you have questions about the Capitol, look at the document and let me know. I want to look at how legislation works. Now, I will admit this is super duper simplified. Like I think my 9-year-old could get this. But there are certain steps that happen. And Bryan, I want you to weigh in here because there's a lot to this. So feel free to weigh in. So the idea is we start with an idea. Something needs to happen. Taxes need to be lowered. Education needs to be reformed. We need to limit property taxes. So there's an idea. And that again, super simplification, because an idea can take years to develop, get right, to craft the language. So if you have an idea for legislation, make sure to contact your lawmaker and get started, and understand that your idea could take years to do. Is that a correct understanding of that, Bryan?
Yeah, it's very rare that a bill is introduced and passes the first year it's done. So, language drafts, so the earlier you get it to your legislator, the better for sure.
Absolutely. And I know Bryan's absolutely right. We've seen bills, ideas take 7-8 years to get done. It's amazing how slow government moves. And actually that's probably a good thing. So Idaho is unique. Not every state has what's called a print hearing. So that's where the idea actually gets put into words and it's codified or shown how it will affect state code. And the presenter says, hey, I would like to introduce this idea, or what they call an RS, or a routing slip, into the legislative process. Will you vote to print it? Now, there is some, and I've seen some confusion around the print hearing in the past. There's usually no testimony at a print hearing. Is that right, Bryan?
Yep. Yeah, that's almost always correct.
Yeah,
just an explanation of the bill.
Yeah, there are rare exceptions, but typically there's no testimony. So be aware of that. Don't get incensed if a chairman doesn't allow you to testify at a print hearing. It just never happens, or rarely ever happens. Where you want to go, if you want to weigh in person, is a House committee hearing, for example. And this is, by the way, this is if a bill starts in the House. The process is almost flipped exactly if a bill starts in the Senate. So a House committee hearing is where a bill will be vetted thoroughly. And what happens usually is the chairman says, Representative Zollinger, please present House Bill 333. The floor is yours. The lawmaker or the other presenter, it could be a lobbyist, it could be an agency official, it could be anyone, could be a member of the public, will present the idea of the bill to committee. Then the presenter will stand for questions from the committee. And that can be, sometimes if it's a super simple bill, it could be 5 minutes. If it's a really long bill, the presentment and the Q&A can take an hour, 2 hours. I've seen it go long days. Yeah. Bryan was in the House Judiciary Committee last year, and I remember they were there. What was the latest you were there last night? Like 8, 9?
Yeah, we went 8 o'clock. Usually they kicked us out of the Capitol at 9, so we had to close up. But
yeah, and they can go forever. So this is where, and after the Q&A, then they open it to public testimony. Now, this is where you can make your voice heard front and center, right to legislator spaces. Now, I will tell you, different lawmakers have different styles. So, Bryan, when you were in the Capitol, when you were listening to testimony, what kind of testimony worked for you? What do you think was effective? And what didn't work for you?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the remarks need to be planned out. Sometimes you get people that ramble. So it's nice to just keep it concise. Like Dustin said, some of these hearings go way too long. We want to hear from everybody. If it's been said, don't worry about repeating it. It's not the number of people that testify. We're looking for new information. So research what you're doing, plan your remarks, be specific, and always ask us or tell us how you want us to vote at the end, because literally I've sat through 20-minute testimony, and at the end they don't tell us how it is, and they've kind of laid out the pros and cons and never told us how, after their research, what they want. So, tell the truth, be respectful. Don't call people out. I've seen that. It's just poor technique. You'll turn a lot of the committee members off. If you're pointing fingers or blaming somebody or calling names, just like life, just be respectful. Try to help them understand your view, but have it researched out, use your time wisely, and do it concisely.
Absolutely. I've sat through a number of hearings where I've seen all of that, people insulting lawmakers. That's just not going to work. And I know that, again, lots of people on this call are frustrated. Lots of Idahoans are frustrated, but this is the process we have, and you're going to turn a lot of people off if all you do is get up there and throw out insults. And I'll tell you that I've seen people gavelled down by a chairman or ordered to leave a committee, or their time has been cut off because they are being too caustic and too hostile to the committee members. I will say chairmen are really committed generally to decorum and to respectful civil debate. So if you want to go in there and just throw out names and call names and be toxic, I mean, more power to you, I guess, but I don't think that will be effective. And we really want to change ideas, change hearts, change minds, and change policy for the better. So there is a couple questions. Number one, Christina asks if it's Robert's Rules of Orders. It's actually Mason's. We use a variation. So if you want to order, that book right there is like $140. It's not cheap. But I think you can get a PDF of it somewhere. But Mason's is the guiding principle of debate. Let's see. There was another question. Yes. I don't know who asked this, but yes, chairman, if it's a really popular hearing, meaning well attended, chairman can and do limit debate. Usually it's 3 minutes. They will give you some leeway if you're making your point and they let you go to 4 or 5, but I've seen hundreds of people at certain bill hearings, and they do limit debate to get as many people in as possible. And usually if that happens, what they'll do is they'll say, hey, if you're from out of the valley, out of the Treasure Valley, you get to the head of the line because you travel to be here. So that's an accommodation that they make. So yes, they can and will limit testimony. Anything else about the House committee hearing we need to know, Bryan?
Not really. Somebody asked which side you should start your bill on. And that's really a strategic decision. You probably need to get familiar with the committee members, talk to your legislator or whoever's helping you with the bill and find out, because that's always a strategic decision. If one committee is more favorable than the other, that's where you want to start your bill. And you need to know the committee members. And, I hate to say it, but a good lobbyist knows those committee members and where they're leaning and what they're going to do. So that's usually how you would decide where to start the bill, whether it's in the House or the Senate.
Yep, absolutely. I will say tax bills, for the most part, more or less have to start in the House. Yep. But yeah, it really is a strategic move based on, the research you've done about the committee members and their persuasions and their inclinations. So that's one of those things that, and if you're working with a lawmaker on a bill, they will kind of help you and strategize. I don't even know if that's a word, but they will strategize with you on that. So good. That's a really good question though. So next we'll move on from the House floor here to the House floor hearing. So this is where bills have cleared committee. They're on the House floor and they're ready to debate. And sometimes debate is super quick. The bill sponsor will get up and say, here's the bill, here's what it does, here's the impact, here's the cost, et cetera, et cetera. And then there'll be no questions and they'll vote and it will pass and move on to the Senate. I hate those bills because they're no fun. I love watching floor debate and stuff, but it's a lot of fun. And for your edification, if you want to participate in this, you can sit in the gallery or you can watch the House floor or Senate floor from home. And we have a link to that. I think it's on my page, actually. We'll get to that in a minute. So there's not much to know about the House floor hearing, right, Bryan? Or is there anything that the public needs to know?
Not really. I mean, there's no public participation, so you've nailed it.
Okay, cool. So next is the Senate committee hearing. And you think, well, that's redundant. It's actually not. It's really good to have a lot of eyes on a piece of legislation because it affects your life. I've seen bills pass in one body and good discussion over there, and then they go over to the other body, and a senator or representative will say, we didn't think about this, we didn't think about how this would affect this group or this business or whatever, and the bill dies because it just was something that was missed on the other side. But again, this is where you can weigh in with the senators. Again, in your district, you have 2 House members and 1 senator. So your senator may be on a particular committee. But again, same rules apply here, and especially in the Senate, where they're very, very concerned about decorum and respectful dialogue and civil discourse and stuff. A little bit more than the House. I mean, they care a lot too, but the Senate is really about that. Is that right? Is that good interpretation?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, cool. Anything? I mean, you've done some Senate committee hearings. Anything I need to note there, Bryan?
Nope, it's pretty much the same procedure. So
okay, cool. So then, of course, it moves again to the Senate floor hearing. Same thing as the House floor hearing, where bill sponsor gets up, explains the bill, answers questions. If there are questions or negative debate or whatever, the sponsor gets to defend the bill in a closing debate, and then they vote. In the House, and going back to the House floor, there's an electronic voting process. In the Senate, it's by roll call vote, which gets pretty monotonous at times, but that's how it works. And then the next step is it goes to the governor for his consideration. Now, he can sign the bill, he can veto the bill, or he can just let it pass into law without his signature. And then if there is a veto, they can override and stuff like that. But that's not something we're going to cover today. So does that make sense, Bryan? I mean, is there anything we missed? There's a lot more there. I think Janae in our office had a concern earlier, wanted to share. Talk about the role, if you will, of chairman in this process. They hold a lot of power. So can you talk about chairman?
They do, probably more power than we would like, or they should, but they're the gatekeepers. I mean, the very first hurdle you're going to have to pass. And that's why, some of the questions about you work with a committee member or your legislator, I always say start with your legislator because they can be a powerful ally, but they're going to want to find somebody on that committee to sponsor the bill or carry it or help. You may want to go personally. If you have a bill, I would go with your legislature, meet personally with the committee chair. It's a lot harder, just like in life, to say no to somebody in person rather than just sending them emails. Get in touch, get eye to eye with that committee chairman. Again, the same rules apply. Be respectful, explain why it's needed. I hate to say it, but sometimes you have to grovel with those committees. I've had to, literally beg to just hear a bill because it's a great idea. If you can get it to the committee, it'll go. And they have a lot of power and they'll just block it. So again, be respectful, but get a hold of them.
Absolutely. And that's something that we've here at IFF have been concerned about for the past couple of years, because some really good legislation has been stopped because one person in the Capitol has the power to stop it. And there are roadblocks along the process. The speaker can stop legislation at the desk. Chairman can stop legislation. It's frustrating. Sometimes it works in our favor. There was a chairman back in, I want to say 2012, who stopped Obamacare single-handedly, Medicaid expansion single-handedly, because she, wanted to. But it's also been used to kill really good conservative ideas, unfortunately. So that's the nature of the process. So a couple things. Now let's get away from process and talk about how to build a relationship with your lawmaker, which is the key to winning, and your lawmakers, by the way, which is the key to winning the battle. So Bryan, talk about how people, when you were in office, how they made a relationship with you, how they changed your mind or influenced you, or if that's possible, and what does work, what doesn't work, what they should avoid.
Yeah, it's how to win friends and influence people. It comes down to that. And, we're lucky enough in Idaho that as representatives, you represent about 50,000 people. 10% of that, if that, are actively involved. So reach out in the off season, build a relationship with them, start texting, get their phone number, call, email, always be respectful. Now I get there's this confrontational politics stuff in election time, and I see that play out, and it is what it is. I'm not going to comment on those tactics, but when you're trying to get a bill passed, you have to have legislators, and maybe it's not yours. You can reach out to legislators outside your district. I think it's always best to start with yours. When you're communicating with them, be passionate, be personal, be knowledgeable. If it's about a bill you're trying to run or get them to run. Now, if you're talking about bills that are coming up, we get bombarded with emails. Some bills will get 200, 300 emails easily. And a lot of them are if you can avoid the form emails, I would. You just get turned off and it doesn't get read. You're filling an inbox and it's not a numbers game. So always, again, the same as personal testimony, plan out your remarks, know your subject matter. If it affects you personally or somebody you know, share those stories. Those are the things lawmakers are looking at. We have the data. There are think tanks across the country that have commented. A lot of the legislation we see has been run in other states or drafted. There's, statistics, data. But if you have any personal experience with the bill, that's what you want to share. And it's kind of the same with testimony at the hearings. But Dustin's right. You want to build the relationship with your legislators. And fortunately, we live in a state that we have access. You can get in touch with your lawmakers. If they're not responding, that's another thing. You have 3 of them in your district, the senator and 2 representatives. You should be able to forge a relationship with some of those people. And if not, reach out to others. And I've had people come to me and say, I can't get in touch with my legislator. Well, who is it? And other legislators will help you with that relationship. I went to legislators and said, hey, you've got a constituent. They reached out to me. They said they can't get you, took the information down. Sometimes they just have so many emails, maybe they didn't get to you. So use all angles, but those are some of the, build that relationship first, always be respectful. Legislators are human beings too. When they do something good, perhaps you don't agree with them all the time, but it's always good practice. If there's a bill or a good vote or a floor speech they make that you do happen to agree with, tell them thank you. That means something. You're building that relationship long term. And I think it was always helpful. I had Democrats completely opposite to me. Some of the bills we deal with they're not partisan bills. And I have Democrats that were respectful, that I would always read every one of their emails because they gave me good information. I might not agree with it, but they had that my respect because they always treated me with respect. So it was a lot easier.
I think we lost Bryan, so I guess I'm going to have to carry the meeting for just a few minutes. This is not great, but you know what? We make life go on. Bryan's absolutely right. Lawmakers thrive on personal relationships. That's how these politics work. And so the more you can make personal relationships happen, the more successful you will be. And I know that I've been there. I know that throwing bombs on social media is super fun, but it may not be the most effective way to work. And I'll say that some of you will say, well, yeah, my lawmaker is the worst though, and they don't listen to me. That's fine. And that may happen. That absolutely may happen. Then that means that either you need to recruit more of your friends to become, enlarge your voice, to amplify your microphone, make it bigger. Or maybe you just need to run for office yourself. And that's absolutely a possibility. There are a couple questions about timing. So let's talk about timing of the session until Bryan gets back. If he gets back, we'll find out. But the legislative session begins January 11th. That's 4 days away. It starts with the State of the State address. Now, the State of the State address, big news, lots of headlines, lots of interviews, lots of glitz. I mean, as much glitz as there can be for there he is, Bryan's back. As much glitz as there can be for a legislative session or for a political idea. But this is not, the governor doesn't get to dictate to the legislature what it does. It's just his wish list of items, how he wants to, or what he wants to see in the state house this year, and the initiatives he wants to see. Sometimes lawmakers adopt them, go along. Sometimes they tweak them, or sometimes they ignore them. It's happened in the past where a lawmaker or a governor wanted something and lawmakers are just like, no, not doing that, not interested. So the State of the State is not, it's just a speech. It's just a speech and a wish list. That's it. Now, Bryan, talk about let's back up. So again, January 11th, that's when the legislative session starts. There is no set end time, which is frustrating to me because I'd love lawmakers to have to go home by a certain date. They do that in Utah. They get 45 days to do the work and go home. It's fantastic.
It'd be great.
They can run bills from they could start on day 1, but they generally don't. But day 2, all the way through the end of session. But the first few weeks are are generally where they slog through rules. Can you briefly outline the rules process for us? Because I think there's a lot of confusion about that, and it's not really a well-known process.
Yeah, I mean, this is another area that citizens can be really helpful, because what happens in the rules process, we hear from every agency, the whole alphabet comes and presents the rule changes, and there are so many. I'm telling you right now, no legislator reads all of those proposed rules, the rules that are going into effect. In fact, they're so numerous that unless somebody in that field that rule is affecting comes forward to tell us, I've seen many rules slip by that nobody was aware that was even a problem. So you need to, if your profession is one that's has a department, or I think all of us are in a profession that has some kind of government oversight, but you need to pay attention to the rules in your particular field, your particular industry. And if there are any concerns, this is something that goes on the summer. I would contact your legislature before getting to session. But if you just catch it as we're reviewing those rules, let them know the specific rules, again, by email, however you can get a hold of them, because once they're aware of that, a lot of times they'll catch it, or help you stop that rule, or something like that. Proposing a rule and getting it changed is different, because that has to be done in the off-season session during the summer usually. So if you have your rules you want to add, it's different. But if there's a proposed rule you don't agree with, you need to make sure your legislator knows about that early, so we can catch that before we review it, because it's most people's eyes gloss over and we go through those rules, and unless somebody brings one to our attention, a lot of them slip through.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, there are questions in the chat. What are examples of rules? Well, some of them are really just small little changes to administrative code. So the Constitution outlines things, and then the state code fills in the gaps of the Constitution. And then what I'm told is, and my understanding is, that administrative code fills in the gaps in state law. So kind of how you go about things, right?
Yep.
So two really good examples. Common Core, believe it or not, I can't even believe it. Common Core was adopted through rule, not legislation, through rule. And it was actually kind of sort of repealed, and we're still working through that process, but the real repeal process happened through the rules process. There's a lot of stuff that needs to change with the rules process. We won't get into that tonight because this is 101, not 102, or 201 or 301. But it's a interesting process. It's a vexing process, and stuff can go awry. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I was working as a reporter for the Idaho Freedom Foundation, just covering meetings. And Representative Cheney in Rev and Tax, he tweeted something about a tax hike on Netflix. So there was some ambiguity in law at that time. And the agency, the tax group, said, hey, we're going to tax Netflix. And he tweeted about it. And we're like, wait a second, you can't do this. But they did. They started taxing Netflix. Now, this was all before the internet sales tax actually went into effect, whatever. But there are significant things that happen through the rules process. So for those who are asking, where can we see the rules? I don't know that at the moment. I'm just spacing on it. But
I just put that in the comment, Dustin, that you can go to that link right there, the admin rules Idaho, and all the proposed rules are right there. You just find the department, and you can see them right there.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you, Bryan. You're the MVP of this call. So the first few weeks they slog through rules. They're usually boring hearings, but like I said, there can be some really weighty matters handled through rules. And then usually end of January, February, we really get into a lot of bill hearings. There's a lot of time spent in committee rooms. And then toward the end of March, or actually towards March, you'll start to see longer floor sessions. They'll spend 2-3 hours a day on the floor. And then at the end of March, when they're trying to get out of there, you can see marathon floor sessions, 5, 6, 7 hours. You'll see, 4 hours in the morning, 3 hours at night, because they just got to run through bills. Those can be long days for lawmakers. And I want to make a point there. I'm sure, Bryan, I know your schedule was packed, jam-packed when you were a lawmaker. What did a typical day look like for you?
So I would try to get to the Capitol 6:30 in the morning if possible. Some of the committees start at 7. JFAC is 7 in the morning. Most of the others were 8 or 9. So you have usually an hour to meet with constituents, lobbyists, whoever you have meetings with, maybe 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock to 8. After that, you go to committees an hour or two. We would hit the floor usually about 11 o'clock, break for lunch at noon, sometimes depending how late in the session, like you said, come back for a second floor session in the afternoon, or there's always committee meetings from about 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, unless it was judiciary and rules, and then it was 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. And in between every 15-minute block that we had between meetings, we would try to fill those up with meetings with constituents or different groups that were bringing bills. So that's kind of what it looks like. So it's tough to find time. You want to get it scheduled. You want to be on top of it, know when whatever bills you want are coming up for hearing to try to get with the legislators before it hits committee.
Yeah. And I will say again that, I ask that to remind people that if your lawmaker does not respond to you immediately, please keep getting at them, because they are extremely busy. So be patient. And they may not, if they disagree with you, they might not, who knows, but just remember that they're human too. They're doing the best they can. They're in meetings for hours and hours every single day. So please be patient with them. Now I want to run through a couple resources. Is there anything else we need to know about testimony, or just building that relationship with people? What is there anything that again doesn't work? Anything else that people should know about building that relationship with lawmakers?
I think you've covered it all pretty good. I mean, it really is just remembering that they're human beings. They have emotions. If somebody attacks them, a lot of them just get turned off right then and there. This is crazy to say, but I know legislators that have voted against good bills just because of somebody who's bringing it or something. And so you got to take that into account, that they are emotional creatures as well. So it's respectful, knowledgeable, but just the basics: winning friends and influencing people. Good communication. So
absolutely, it's critical. And I will tell you, there was somebody in the comment section who asked about a sign-up sheet. Yes, you are required to sign up, especially if you want to testify. Those sign-up sheets usually go out 30 minutes to 15 minutes, somewhere in that range, before the committee meeting. All you have to put down is your name. I think there's a spot for your address. You don't necessarily have to do that. And if you wish to testify, that's all that's on that sheet. Those are entered into a public record that goes online. So just be aware that that's a thing. I think you can go in without, you can actually just go in and sit down without signing in. But if you want to testify and participate in the process, then definitely sign in.
Yep. There's a good comment thread going on, people asking, about offering help to their legislators. It's a great idea.
Really
I had a list of different citizens that had volunteered for just different categories. Hey, I'm an expert on building codes, or I'm an expert on whatever it is. Definitely get a hold of your legislators at any point and say, hey, if a bill ever comes up like this, here's my contact information. I'd love to answer any questions. This is the field I'm in. Absolutely. It's a great way to do it. And I think most legislators have their list of their go-to people in the communities if something like that comes up. So it's a great idea.
Yeah. And I'll say, I was talking with somebody from California a couple of weeks ago about they want to do some work here in Idaho on something. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, they're like, so tell me about your lawmakers. Tell me about their chiefs of staff, their policy people. I'm like, chief of staff, our lawmakers don't have staff. They have support staff that can kind of, they might have a scheduler for a group of senators or a committee secretary, but largely they are on their own. This is not a professional legislature, folks. So again, it comes back to people are busy. And if you can help them, if you do have expertise, please do, because they need all the help that they can get. Sometimes I think, and I was talking to an activist today who, I was just conferring with him and making notes for this call. He said, when we think of lawmakers, we kind of exalt them sometimes, and maybe we shouldn't. But we imagine that they're super duper smart. No, they're just like us. They need help just like we do. Bryan's an attorney. He knows a lot about a lot of things, but maybe picking good football teams isn't something he has expertise in. I do. I can help him with. Go Ducks. But anyway, that's something that I can help him with. So always be there, be a resource, offer your expertise in a very respectful way. Let's see what is next. So I want to offer a couple resources for you that I put on a webpage, easy to use. Some of them are self-serving, but we do a really good job of educating people about the policies that come before them. But so the first one is our Idaho Freedom Index. We're really proud of this project. It's not complete yet. We're still coding some stuff in with our design team or whatever. But the Idaho Freedom Index is our tool that helps you better understand legislation and how your lawmakers vote. Now, keep in mind, we don't give lawmakers grades. That's not something we do. They earn their grades. So how does that work? Well, we look at a number of bills. If a bill is consequential, if it will change something about liberty and limited government in Idaho and affect you in a positive or negative way, we look at that bill, we score it, and then lawmakers vote on it. They get a score. We add up the score, and the people who on this page, they all have 0 right now because obviously there's no bills in the hopper. But the people who score highly on this tend to vote for bigger government, or excuse me, the people who score highly are the Liberty rock stars. They always or usually vote for less government. Excuse me, that was a big mistake. The people at the bottom of the index are those who vote for more government. That's how that works. So, and the cool thing about this is some of you have asked, well, how do I find my lawmakers? Well, we make it very easy for you. You can actually type in your address here and just hit enter, and we will find your lawmakers. This address is my old address in Middleton. These are the Middleton lawmakers. Super duper easy. So you can just call them. You can look at their score. You can look at their voting records and see how they're representing you. Maybe they're doing really well. Maybe they need some encouragement. Maybe they need a challenger. That's up for you to decide. I don't know, but we want you to have this as a resource. If you want to do historical dives into their records, we provide there's the previous Freedom Index years here. You can see the rating metrics that we use, how we calculate the score. We want to be transparent about this process because we understand it can irk some people if they disagree. So we want to be transparent and show how we come to these decisions. So there's that. And then these are 2020 bills, but you can go through and look through all the bills that have been rated. And last year we did 270 bills, which was a high for us. I hope we don't do that again because it was stressful, but they're all here. You can go look through them and there's that. So that's a huge resource for you. We're going to be doing a lot with the Freedom Index this year. So there's that. So if you have questions about that, please reach out. The next thing is just the legislature's website. There's so much information on here. There's so much. Somebody asked, well, how do we see what's on a committee schedule for the day or the House schedule? That's on this website. That's legislature.idaho.gov. You can go and look at legislative sessions. This is where you'll read your bills, spend lots of time doing that. There's committees, laws, rules, Senate, House, everything's there. There's the calendar. You see just lots of meetings here. You'll have to go through that. I'm not going to go through every one, but there's that. So that's a huge resource for you. And let's look. And if you don't want to use the Freedom Index to find your lawmakers, here's this. This is a tally. So this is for House members here. Ben Adams is a newbie, and I actually called a lawmaker today and just to ask how they wanted to be contacted, and we got to chatting, and he said, you really should have your state lawmakers' phone numbers in your phone. And I never thought about that before. I just thought about, just contact them, however, whatever. But it really is that important. So their phones are here, and it's really cool because our lawmakers, like Bryan said, they're very accessible. They have their home phone numbers on here, or their cell phone numbers, or their business numbers. Really cool. Did you ever get any calls at home, Bryan?
All the time, but I like that. I mean, you can Google my name still, and my cell phone pops right up because I wanted that on Google. I might change it now that I'm out of office.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people don't even pay attention. I'm still getting calls, and I'm like, I'm not in office this time, so let me give you the number of the new guy. So absolutely, I loved getting calls. Your legislator should.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can read a bio for them, get their house address or their email address, stuff like that. So there's that. You can even see pictures. They're very nice pictures. So then this is part of the legislative website. Again, there's the Bill Center. You can go in there and read the legislation that you're interested in. It's all here. This is, again, 2020 legislative session. You can see there are so many bills. You can kind of see where the bill is in process. So this bill was stopped in the House Transportation Committee. It never got further than that. These ones are law. This one failed in the House, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that for you. What else do we have? Actually, let's take some questions. Do we have any questions about anything so far? Are we missing anything, Bryan?
I think you've done a pretty good job for 101. Someday we'll have to do legislative 201, but yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm going to get into teaching. So I want to run through these links for you, resources and links. Keep thinking of your questions while I run through these, because this is the Q&A portion. I think we've gotten all the 101 stuff done. You're right. Actually, there's a question. Do legislators like getting snail mail, getting letters in the mail? Bryan, any thoughts?
They draw our attention for sure, because I did not get a lot of mail like that. Usually when I did, one time I got a box with a dried piece of dog poo in the mail. That really got my attention. It wasn't a positive thing, but no, snail mail, absolutely. You just have, if it's on a bill or something, it's probably not going to get the bill is going to be over before you get it. So, but on general topics, absolutely.
Absolutely. Cool. That's frightening and horrifying, but I'm sure it happens more than we.
It was very entertaining.
Oh boy. Ian asks, just very quickly, could you reiterate the difference between a print hearing and the committee hearing? Yes, absolutely. This is very important. A print hearing is where a legislative idea, which is actually called a routing slip, it's actually private property. You can't get a routing slip, which is call it a pre-bill, if you will. It's where it's introduced into the legislative process. The bill sponsor alone is allowed to introduce it. There's no public comment usually. And there are very few questions about the bill. Usually it's like technical stuff and where a comma goes, et cetera, et cetera. A committee hearing is the full hearing. That's where a bill sponsor will present the bill. Then he or she will have questions about the bill. Then public testimony will be taken. The sponsor will be allowed to close. The committee will have discussion about a bill. Somebody will make a motion, and then the committee will vote. There are 3 different motions that can be made. Well, there are more than that, but generally there are 3. There's more than there's 4 or 5. But anyway, the final disposition of the bill comes at that point. They can keep it in committee. They can kill it. They can hold it. They can amend it. They can't amend it. They can send it to the amending order. There's a lot there. But that's where that happens is in the committee process. Tim,
question. Yeah, on the question when to contact your legislator, when do they decide how they're going to vote? Early. So yes. Get to them early, as soon as a bill gets out, because just like any human being, our opinions develop, and sometimes it's first impression. So we carry around score sheets. We know how a vote's going to go usually on the floor before we get there, unless it's really close. I mean, good legislators are tracking. If it's their bill, I'm going to all 70 House members, and I'm going to find out, hey, where are you at on this bill before we get to the floor? So if you want to influence them, you always want to get to them very early in the process.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about this earlier, but somebody just asked, is there a preferred method of communication? Snail mail, email? I know there are a number of lawmakers that I actually communicate with. We talk on Facebook Messenger, right? Is there a preferred method among all members, or is it just kind of like find your method for your lawmakers?
I think it's going to depend on your lawmaker. I mean, I really like texts. I have several group texts with constituents. And if you can build that relationship with your legislator that they are texting, I would get texts from constituents while we're on the floor about to vote with helpful information. So I really prefer the text mess. Once I had a relationship with them, or even if people just got my number, and introduced themselves via text and said, hey, I'm watching this hearing, or I'm watching this. Did you consider this? So I really like text because I can't talk on the phone during hearings and stuff, but I do get my text messages. So I like that, but it probably depends on your legislator.
Absolutely. And it really does. So, and that's one of those things that, if you build that personal relationship, show that you have credibility, that you know what you're talking about, that will come naturally, and you might even become their go-to person if you are an expert in a subject matter area. How do you tell when a politician is lying? I'm not going to comment on that one. That's a good question.
When they open their mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
No comment. So there's that. Ryan Spoon, who's a good friend of mine. Well, he's somebody I admire a lot because he loves liberty a ton. He says, would IFF staff members that are leading specific legislative priorities like to coordinate with us? Yeah, we always work on ideas. If you have an idea that you think is good, reach out to us. We're more than happy to talk to you about it. We may not be able to take up the issue as one of our main priorities because we have a full plate. There's a lot coming up in this legislative session, but we're always willing to weigh in, to help you craft really good legislation, and to give you pointers on messaging and stuff like that. Absolutely, always willing to help. And I would love to see more citizens and residents pitching ideas to their legislators. I think it's really cool process. So, let's see. Should you file testimony online besides in person? I think that means is email versus going in person. Do what you can. If something is really important to you, show up at the Capitol and make a day of it, right? Or if you have to come down from Coeur d'Alene or from Salmon or whatever, make a 2-day of it and schedule meetings with all of your lawmakers and committee chairs and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. But like, if all you can do is send emails, text messages, Facebook messages, stuff like that, do that too. It all matters. It all matters. Let's see. How do I schedule a meeting with my legislator? Email them. Again, it comes down to how your lawmakers like to be contacted. You can call them, you can email them, text them. They're just like us. So do that. There are some, I think, senators, they have schedulers that kind of work for them. I believe, especially chairmen, they have a lot going on. So, it might be tricky to reach them, but just reach out like you would anybody else. Just do that. Let's see. So let's get back to the resources for just a second. So yeah, here's a page we prepared for you. It's idahofreedom.org/resources. We've got the legislature's website, the JFAC website, or their hearing schedule. And I did that because JFAC has a tremendous amount of power. They spend billions of dollars every year. And you need to know about that process and how the hearings work. So educate yourself on JFAC if you're really interested. The Legislative Video Archive, which is one of my favorite tools. If you miss a debate, you can actually go in and download a floor hearing, or certain committee rooms have video. So go and look in the Legislative Video Archive. We do that all the time because we want to make the legislature accessible to you. And so we cut up the clips and share them. It's really fun. It's really interesting to see how your lawmakers think. So we do that all the time. I encourage you to go do that. The governor's website. A lot of folks are angry at the governor over lockdown stuff and COVID and stuff. If you want to weigh in, talk to them there. The Lieutenant Governor, Janice McGeehan, there's her website. There's our Freedom Index, our 2020 Freedom Index chart pamphlet thing. You can download that so you can share it with your friends. And this is something new that we're doing this year, is a lot of video. Like I said, if you're curious about the Freedom Index and how it works, but if you want a better explanation than the one I gave you tonight, you can go watch this quick video. Our policy analyst, Anna Miller, explains why the Freedom Index is so valuable and why people love it and why it's our #1 page on our site every year, because it's a huge resource. So go watch that. There's that map that I gave you that you can download it, print it off, high res, I believe, for you. If it's not, let me know and I can make you a different version. The Capitol guidelines kind of show you how you need to behave, rules of decorum in the Capitol. This one's fun. Representative Heather Scott let us have this and share it with you. She gave us permission. She said she wants to help everybody get involved. It's 110 ways to engage with government. Really cool little pamphlet that we put together. Go ahead and download that. And this is more than the state government. This is city government, county government, et cetera. Very cool thing that we got. And then there's that simplified sheet of how a bill becomes law. That's available there for you. Now, the resources that we have to keep you in touch and informed this session and every session and off session, we have our Facebook page. We're gonna post a ton of video content there. Our bill ratings go there. That's kind of our home base for all of our content besides the website, but Facebook's how we reach everybody. So go follow us on Facebook. Our group is where we have discussions about this stuff. I love our group. I love the passionate people in our group. The link is there. Our YouTube page, we're on MeWe. We're extending our reach because we're worried about Facebook and the censorship that goes on there. So we're expanding to MeWe. We're on Parler. We're on Twitter. Twitter is a cesspool. Don't get on there. It's the worst. But if you do, you can follow us on Twitter. Something we started last year was our text group. This is super duper cool, and I love being able to text people. This is our quick alert system. So if we need, if you need to know about a bill, if there's a really important hearing or the governor is considering something, like, we will let you know through a text group, and that gets to you immediately. Super duper fast system. I hope you join our text club. We won't spam you. We try to limit our texts to just the content and information you really need to know, but please text index to 208-514-4480. I'm the guy answering texts and texting with you. And it's not just a one-way conversation, by the way. I actually have conversation with people on our text list, and I answer questions. So that's a really good way to reach me and reach the IFF staff if you have questions. Finally, subscribe to the IFF email list. It's right here. Again, we use it sparingly. It's maybe a week, once a week, twice a week, something like that. But we try to give you the content that we think is valuable, that will help you stay educated and stay informed about the legislative process and about the battle for freedom here in Idaho. And that about wraps up Legislature 101. Do we have any final questions? Let's see.
There have been a few popped up. One I think is interesting. Is how to strike laws from the books. I mean, this is a big thing. You're right. There's so many laws that need stricken from the books. It's basically the same process. The bill's a lot simpler to draft. Get the idea to the legislator, the go to LSO, and it just basically says this section is repealed. It's that easy. So it's the same process, just in reverse order.
Yep, absolutely. Bill asks, and I saw this one earlier, and I want to get back to it. Do you need, it's kind of I think the essence of the question is if you're there weighing in on legislation, do you need to register as a lobbyist? If you're going there as a concerned citizen who is contacting his lawmakers, absolutely not. You're just participating in the process. If someone is paying you to be there, absolutely you need to register. Absolutely. And please follow the rules. We believe in the rule of law. And that's really, really important. There have been people recently who have not followed those guidelines, and it's unfortunate. So please, do the right stuff there. And if you have questions about lobbyist guidelines for consultant attorney, ask the Secretary of State's office, stuff like that. So, but if you're just going down there as a regular citizen, as Joe Blow, that's like me, you don't need to register as a lobbyist. Let's see. Any other questions? Anything, Bryan? I mean, we want to wrap up. We've got a lot of people here with us still. Is there anything else they need to know about this process?
I think we've covered the basics. Like I said, you need to do legislature 201 at some point. We can get into details, but I think we've covered it. And you've given the points to follow up. If they have questions, get a hold of you. I'm always, whether it's Parler, MeWe, I think Dustin, I think you're on some of those as well. Some people were asking about IFF on those platforms. I know you are, so because people are moving away from Facebook. So I think that's good to get out and let them know you're there as well.
Yep. And I would say, guys, and I want to wrap this up with maybe a motivational speech, if you will, but guys, if freedom is going to flourish, if we're going to preserve the Idaho way of life, it's up to us. So that means we have to share our content on Facebook, on MeWe, on Parler. We have to have real conversations with our neighbors. We have to respectfully engage with our lawmakers and be present in the process. Because I'll tell you, the swamp, meaning all the agencies, all the bureaucrats, they have their people. They're going to be there. They're going to be at the session. They always are. They want their power. They want their regulations, stuff like that. They're there. The left, I mean, oh my gosh, the one thing that I loved about the special session, Bryan, was that conservatives turned out in droves. Now,
it was amazing.
There was some bad behavior there, and we never, ever endorse that. We don't condone that. But conservatives, holy cow, you guys were awake. And it was fantastic because normally, I mean, the Capitol is right there. It's 2 or 3 blocks from Boise's North End, which is the People's Republic of the North End is what I call that, because it is blue as blue can get, meaning progressive, right?
Right.
So this is home field based. This is home field advantage for the progressives. They're going to show up. They always do. And we've got a university right down the road. They always show up. Guys, it's on us. We have to show up. We have to. If lawmakers are to hear a freedom-oriented perspective, it has to come from us. So please, if you have questions, reach out. But this is on us. It's on us. Every day we've got to be working hard, showing up early, building those relationships that matter. Again, thank you so much to everyone. We'll make this recording available for you to share with your friends and your people on social media. Reach out and let's have a really good 2021. Thank you so much for attending Legislature 101 with me and Bryan Zollinger and Idaho Freedom Foundation, Idaho Freedom Action. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.